Hello, this is Christian Okoye, former Kansas City Chiefs. You are listening to Grilling Truth.
In advance on the Grilling Truth Sports Network. Right now, we're brought to you by nobody. But if you want to be a sponsor, you can hit us up at Grilling Truth on Twitter or grillingtruth@gmail.com. I'm your host for Survive in Advance, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host, 1981 national champion, Steve Risley.
Nobody is sponsoring. What happened? What happened to the tens unit people?
Oh, they're here. But
they're there?
Yeah,
what happened to my booking? My booking buddy decided to give it all up. Now they're going to lose their ass, didn't they?
No, my booking buddy we're staying away from the booking sites or the betting sites because bigger sponsors don't want to go there. We are actually sponsored. We are sponsored partially on this show by PEMF, which is Replenishing Care Technologies. I just wanted to bring that up to get a plug in to see if there's anybody out there that wanted to sponsor this brilliant show.
I'm banking on Rolls-Royce.
That's fine. I'll take Yugo. Yeah. Do they still make Yugos?
Yeah. No, they don't make Yugos anymore.
Those were fine cars, though.
They were the Pinto of Europe.
Yeah.
Hit one in the rear and it blows up.
Yeah, couldn't get your 6'8" ass in one probably though.
Thank God. Thank God.
All right.
I couldn't get a Yugo.
We got two topics.
Hey, I got
tonight.
two topics for you. Two topics
okay.
tonight.
You can
Let's open up with, which I think will be less of a debate, more of just an informative discussion on the recent ruling today handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court, now allowing all 50 states to freely partake in sports booking and sports betting. This is a landmark case, one that has broken up a monopoly held by the state of Nevada since, I believe, 1992, when the original, let me get the title right here so I don't blow this here because I wrote this down. It was called what was it called? Lost that page, never mind.
Well, come
it was
on,
called
Steve.
the
Now people are making fun of you because you're from Indiana.
The Professional and Amateur Sports Booking Act is what it was called. And it was designed to say that states could not effectively promote or participate in state-sponsored booking or betting in the gambling arenas. However, because the state of Nevada had already been doing it prior to 1992 or 4 when this law was passed. Here are my notes right here behind.
Well, actually, there was 4 states. It was Nevada, Montana, Delaware, and Oregon that had already. Those 3 had already enacted sports lotteries. They were allowed to continue to do so.
Okay.
So.
All right.
It was 4, but Nevada, you're allowed to do anything. And I think what a lot of people are missing here, this doesn't mean that all of a sudden every state's going to have sports gambling. It's going to be up to the states to decide, which is the way it should have been the whole time, because the 10th Amendment to the Constitution with the states' rights, the states have a right to enact something like that. But from what I read on this, I didn't read much, but the Congress could still overthrow this if they wanted to.
Yes, they could. However, it's not likely they're going to overthrow the Supreme Court on a decision as unmeritorious as this, basically. And Judge Alito wrote the opinion for the majority, saying the problem was that state legislators never should be put in a position or under the control of Congress. So therefore, since Alito came out and said that kind of takes a little bit of a hit at letting Congress get involved with this. Now, we know that Nevada is going to lobby like crazy for this, but this is really immaterial. What the purpose here of this whole thing was that Nevada was essentially capitalizing on taxes on all sports betting that was going on in the United States of America legally. And and therefore Nevada is going to take a major hit on revenue in terms of tax revenue from the sports betting, because it's now going to spread out among different states. New Jersey, Chris Christie, who was the governor, was the one who spearheaded this lawsuit and got it going to the Supreme Court while he's no longer governor of New Jersey. He called it a great victory and said that now that the implication for states to be able to tax betting now individually, as opposed to just kind of Nevada taking a national tax and pocketing it all themselves, was magnanimous for each state's coffer and state's legislator. And I tend to agree. To me, it's the same mentality of marijuana. Why do you not legalize it? Because it's going to happen whether you legalize it or not. And at least you ought to legalize it and tax it. You can actually regulate it better if you do legalize it. So from a state's perspective, it's probably going to be easier for each state to regulate it than it would be from an apathetic Congress to regulate it nationally, or let Nevada set its own rules and do whatever they want to do, because they were the only ones really participating in it in any great way, shape, or form. Yes?
Yeah, because this controversy started in 2011 when New Jersey voters actually voted to approve a measure to legalize sports betting to help the casino industries who were faltering economically. But the state law was immediately challenged by professional sports leagues, Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL, and the NCAA, which right there, if the NCAA is in it, it's legit, which pointed to a federal law passed in 1992 that bans state sports betting with some exceptions. My thing is this, me, I'm a libertarian. I think people should have a right to live their lives however they want if they don't affect anybody else. And if somebody wants to bet on a game, they're going to bet on a game. And people could say, well, this will make it more likely for NFL players to do it or Major League Baseball players to do it. And I just don't think that's true, because as Pete Rose proved, you don't have to have legalized sports gambling to be able to do this. But the one thing I think this does do, it was kind of like Prohibition back in, the 1920s, where with Prohibition, everything went underground. People died because of it, because you had a lot of, unseemly characters running it. And when you got rid of Prohibition, you actually saved a lot of lives. And in the end, you're letting people determine their own fate, which is what this country's supposed to be about. But for some reason, over the last 50 years, with more and more federal regulation, they've just made it harder for people to live freely.
Right. And along that same line, you also decrease the power of the mafia by taking away a lot of their income and controlling the underground drinking or bootlegging.
Yeah, that's my point with Prohibition.
You actually fought crime, exactly. And the same mentality is going to apply, I think, in this boat. And, when I spoke to my son about this earlier today, he's out here in California. He's having his fun with the marijuana laws out here, no doubt. And he's like, hey, make it legal. You take the cartels out of the picture, because now you can import it, grow it here, do your own thing, and you don't need the cartels. So maybe somebody's getting smart and saying, you know what, let's fight fire with fire. The way to stop you is not to try and regulate so much, is to deregulate you and to make it available to everybody across the board. Now, I'm sure what this is going to do is put a big bump in the road on the professional sports, on the NCAA, because it's now going to be harder to control, especially with the NCAA right now and what's going on with Adidas and all the under-the-table payments and everything that's going on, Nike, everybody, the whole scandal that's going on there that we reported on earlier. It's going to make that much more difficult for them to control. But I think you and I had a discussion about this a little earlier, and you can bet one of the first people that are going to have the official booking agent of the NCAA is going to be the NCAA. On their banner side is going to be, Mike and Steve's Booking Betting Agency of Indiana. And we're going to sponsor the NCAA, and our banner is going to be flying high on their website. So if they can make a buck off of it, the NCAA will find a way and keep it not profit. So in all, I see this as a good thing. I don't gamble. I don't gamble on the golf course. I don't play anything for money. I'm smart enough to know that the lights in Las Vegas are being paid for by idiots that gamble, not by the people that own the hotels. All right? And my wife is far too materialistic and likes expensive shoes and handbags for me to piss it away on the golf course, gambling against guys who are sandbagging their handicaps anyway. So I do not gamble. But like you said, If that's what people want to do with their leisure sport, their fun time, free time, and for us to say that, there's people that get into gambling and get into addiction, it's not our responsibility to control everybody's lives. It's your own responsibility to be accountable to yourself. And I'm hoping that a large part of this money, really, truly, if Congress want to step up and say, want to do anything, they say, okay, you can gamble, but the money needs to be driven toward education of our youth. Any dollar the state comes in off of sports booking needs to be put directly into your educational systems in your state. I'd be all for that. I'd vote for that congressman or senator in a heartbeat that did something like that. Do good with the money. Don't take the money away. People are going to bet, like you said, no matter what. And I don't think that one state should capitalize and have a monopoly on something that's as big a volume in terms of cash revenue for a single state like this.
All right. So what's our second topic?
Our second topic is one that really kind of just disgusts me about professional sports, and that's the recent firing of the head coach of the Toronto Raptors after having compiled a stellar record for that team and spent 7 years on the right building that program up. That's Dwane Casey. After being named Coach of the Year, obtaining the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and building a program that he inherited that had 28 wins in the first year that he was there, and spent 3 years building and then has made the playoffs every year, only to lose to the well-protected, well-endowed, well-protected, well-funded.
Did you say well
LeBron.
You're not going to say LeBron.
Well-endowed.
Oh, all right. I'm going to let that go.
Cleveland Cavaliers. They lost to Cleveland 3 years as the NBA was trying desperately to find a team to compete with Golden State and promote their heroes and their legends and create the new Michael Jordan. So Toronto loses to them 3 times, comes out and gets swept by Cleveland once again, and then becomes Coach of the Year and is summarily dismissed. I think this is a huge black eye on the NBA.
Why? They do it in every other sport. If you don't win, you go.
Well, and I know that's your point of view, and I understand that the reason you play sports is to win. I get it. But there has to be this phrase of winning with integrity attached to it. Otherwise, what is winning if you're not winning with integrity, winning with class, winning with decency? He has a 600% record in the regular season in his entire career.
Good for him.
All right?
And what are you doing
he's had to face Cleveland. He's 400% or 40% basically winning in the playoffs. The downside, he's been swept, I think, 3 of the 4 times they've lost, they've been swept. But he's faced Cleveland, and virtually nobody has beaten Cleveland in the last 4 years except for Golden State. And nobody's beaten Golden State either. And I don't think Houston will beat Golden State. And while the Celtics made a great run, I'd like to see where this thing ends up. But I would put my money, if I was a gambler, in Indiana or in California, I would probably put my money on Cleveland to be playing one more time. I think it was a bad move. I think it was totally the wrong move. He's run a clean program there. He hasn't had players in trouble. I haven't seen any of his players on TMZ. Hell, I had to look up who his players were because I haven't seen any of them on TMZ. I name players by what TMZ has to label them by.
All right, Steve, you had season tickets to the Colts game, right?
Yes.
What those tickets cost you?
At what point in time? $21 when I started, probably $140 a game when I finally gave them up.
All right, I'm telling you this right now. I'm still a Cincinnati Bengals fan. Always was. Had season tickets till 2013. I got rid of them because I got tired of wasting my money on a team that lost in the first round of the playoffs. I don't care if they're Saints or anything. The only thing that matters is this. Nobody pays $140 to go watch choir boys play sports. And I'm sorry, but I don't think there's any Cleveland Cavaliers that have been arrested. I don't think there's a bunch of teams in the NBA that have a bunch of guys on their team that are convicts. We're not in college.
No,
we're not in high school.
No, they're all just a bunch of baby daddies.
They're all a bunch of baby daddies. Okay, so
like
so you're
Kristen
telling
Thompson?
me this.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that Toronto doesn't have anybody with an illegitimate child?
No, not one.
Not one of them do.
Not one.
Because I looked it up today.
Okay. I don't know the answer
Because
to that
I
question.
knew you were going this way with the integrity thing. And the thing is this, Steve. People thought it was wrong to fire Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy got fired because Tony Dungy built a great team in Tampa Bay, but when it got to the playoffs, he couldn't get over the hump. I think Dwane Casey is a great basketball coach. I love Brad Stevens, but I think Casey should have been the coach of the year. And I think what he did in the regular season was one of the greatest coaching jobs ever. I mean, he helped completely reinvent a team's offense, running contrary to the way he had coached in the past. And I think it's important to mention there that he did it without much roster change, and he had even more success with that team this year. The problem is this: if you're the number 1 seed and you're playing a number 4 seed in the second round and you're getting swept in 4 games, I could see it 2 years ago when the Cavs were loaded. But when I see this team, and 2 of those games were extremely close. And the thing that I saw when I watched him coach was the fact that in game situations, he was not a great coach. And 2 of those games were minute differences on why the game was lost. And I think those adjustments weren't made. And I think there is a difference between a great regular season coach in all sports and a great playoff coach. Now, you've said before, when we used to have the conversation about basketball coaches, I would say, well, this guy's a really good coach. And you'll say, well, no, he hasn't. He hasn't won anything. You said that. You said if he hasn't won a championship, then he's not a great coach. And you said when you're one and done, which I think a 7-game series, it's one and done. You lose that series, you're done. But when you get down to this and you look at it, when you've got a team that is the number 1 seed, they've won double-digit amount of games over the team you're getting swept by, that's a problem. And we just watched the number 8 seed Indiana Pacers, or the number 5 seed Pacers, take that number 4 team who had home court advantage, the distance in a 7-game series, and just barely lost. And I'll tell you what, I watched the Toronto team a little bit this year, and after watching the Pacers against the Cavs, I thought Toronto would win. And when we had this conversation, I said, I think Toronto will win, but they always shit the bed in the playoffs. And when you get swept in 4 games, that's what happened. I mean, right now, if you take away those 4 games against Toronto, Cleveland's a 4-4 team that has been blown out and manhandled in 3 of those losses. And when you look at it, I'm just going to come back to this. I'm going to use your old argument against you that we had in college basketball. He's not a great coach if he can't win in the playoffs. And if he can't win in the playoffs and he's not a great coach, why does it matter what he does in the regular season? Because in the end, the only thing that matters, the only difference between you and a player from Purdue is you got a ring on your finger. That's why Bobby Knight was a great coach. Gene Cady never gets mentioned when they bring up the greatest coaches of all time. Why? Because he didn't get it done when it mattered.
Okay. You're talking apples and oranges, college sports versus professional sports. College sports is a little bit more pure of a basketball game where coaching actually has probably a little more impact directly on a game in the course of a game.
Brad
NBA is more
that.
coaches. Brad Stevens is the future of coaching in basketball. If you're not getting a Brad Stevens to coach your basketball program in the NBA, you're going to be a cellar dweller for a long time.
So let me ask you a question. Do you go out and try to find a Brad Stevens?
I think Dwane Casey is a Brad Stevens.
You're crazy. Casey was known as being an inflexible, old-school coach. That's nowhere near what Brad Stevens is. Now, he's adjusted since then a little bit, but I think to call him Brad Stevens is, kind of crazy.
Okay.
Good.
I think there is no Brad Stevens in the NBA right now. I think Brad Stevens is the role model or the model by which all NBA teams will begin to hunt for coaches now. And Brad Stevens is single-handedly probably going to do somewhat the same thing that Magic and Bird did in the 80s with the NBA. He's going to bring team basketball back into the game and he's going to make teams redefine how they build their NBA teams. I think that's bar none. The old world, the Van Gundys, the Popoviches, the old school coaches, they're going to go by their wayside. And they're going to be starting to fill with people that are prototypes more of Stevens. But this isn't about Stevens. I think that but in my research on Casey, he committed 7 years of his life to doing this, built this team up, built it up. You don't make those kind of strides without help. Before I just turned around and took a coach that had given me that much effort, given me that much growth, and put my team to where they could be number one over the course of a season, rather than just shit can the program, I might tinker with it a bit and say, what can we do to tweak this thing? What kind of assistant coach do we need to bring in here that is a better playoff coach that can assist you with that? What kind of general manager do we need? But this guy has proven he can build a basketball team, build a basketball program. He took that team with 28 wins the first year and took them to the number one seed in his 7th year, making playoffs the last 4 years, something Toronto had never done, a market that nobody gives a shit about. Okay? It's not even the United States, for God's sake. All right? And they are part of the NBA, but he has done his due diligence. So rather than just shit canning, after being named Coach of the Year, I might turn around and say, okay, we're 2 steps short. Let's see if we can build better steps for you. Let's find some assistant coaches. Let's retool your assistant coaching staff. Let's find a general manager. Maybe you're a scared general manager to rethink what you need, what he thinks you need. Listen more, Dwane, before you just go off on your own and try to do things on your own. Learn not to be old school. Take a look at Brad Stevens and what Brad Stevens is doing. Study him and see what he's doing. Let's see if we can adapt that to our program, because we've moved the needle on the Toronto Raptors. And I don't think it's right to fire somebody who's moved the needle until he's just proven beyond a doubt he can't move that needle. Now, Cleveland is a peg that stops all needles from moving, as long as the NBA wants LeBron to be the poster child of the league. And I think had they lost to 3 different teams, they lost to Washington the first time, then they lost 3 straight years to Cleveland, while Cleveland has been in the finals, 5, 6 years in a row now, or what? How many years has Cleveland been in the finals now?
Yeah, I think it's 4 years in a row.
Yeah, 4 years in a row. So nobody's
trying to get to 4.
So let's fire every coach that couldn't get past Cleveland. All right? So they all should be fired then. So that's horse shit.
They all pretty much
Cleveland is a protected basketball team. LeBron is a protected player. And the NBA is a marketing genius, or not even a genius, a marketing company on sports and entertainment. That's why they play the damn games on ESPN.
Let me ask you this then. Why does it matter who the coach for Toronto is then? Because the way you just explained it, nobody has a chance to.
Here's why. Because here are the 7 candidates. Mike Budenholzer. Budenholzer was the Atlanta Hawks head coach the past 5 years. 17 years as a Spurs assistant before, according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, he was going to get close inspection for the Raptors coaching vacancy. Becky Hammon. Well, let's have a chick coach in the NBA. I'm all for that. And I'm going to get letters for that big time. All right, assistant under Popovich. Ettore Messina is another one they're going to bring in. Nick Nurse. We'll nurse the Raptors back to health. There's your headline story right there. Monty Williams. Doesn't he have a daytime talk show?
It's Montel Williams.
Montel Williams. There you go. Stan Van Gundy. Let's just dig dead people up out of the ground.
Is that the Van
and bring
Gundy
them back
that looks
into
like
the game.
Ron Jeremy?
I don't know who it is. Yes, it is, I believe.
Okay.
And then let's get Jerry Stackhouse. He is currently the head coach of the Raptors G League team. There you go. He's going to solve the problems. He's already in their system.
All right. All I'm telling you is this, Steve. If you are a professional coach on any team at any level and you can't get past the second round of the playoffs for 7 years, the only place you don't get fired is Cincinnati. Marvin Lewis is still there. And Marvin Lewis took a program that was probably in worse shape than Toronto with the Bengals, but he has still been a complete and utter failure. I don't care about going to the playoffs. I care about winning everything, especially if I'm spending as much money as you have to spend as a family to go to a game. I want to see wins.
And Marvin has been there how long?
He's been there since 2003. That's my point.
So give
the
me
problem
what's the time frame?
He should have been fired in 2007 or 2008.
Years, right? So 15 years he's been there.
No, I think
that probably is enough time.
He should have been fired in 2007 or 2008.
But he's not.
They kept him too long.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Son, if is the middle word in life, okay?
Well, this is
and
the
shoulda,
if.
woulda, coulda.
This is the if. We have seen multiple teams that keep coming up short when they switch their coach. They get over the top and they win, because this is the thing. He's been there 7 years. And I think whether you're successful or not, there's a moratorium of years that you have with a certain franchise, whether it's 5 years, 15 years. And I just think this. I think this guy has taken this team as far as it can go. And when you look at it, and you're Toronto, that window closes quickly. It is closing quickly because you got teams like the Celtics, the Sixers, the Pacers, who are all gaining on everybody quickly. And let's face it, I think he's a great coach. I think he's going to go somewhere and win. I think he could go somewhere and win an NBA championship. I just don't think he's going to be able to do that at Toronto. After a certain amount of time, your shelf life is done. And 7 years is a long time, Steve, especially when you've been in 4 or 5 straight playoffs. And it's not just that he's losing. He's being swept every year.
I would buy your argument. He just swept 2 years. He was only swept 2 years.
What was the other one? 4 games to 1?
I don't know, 4-2, actually, I believe it was.
Okay, so he is 2-12.
I don't think in the NBA to take a program like Toronto, which was a hellhole to begin with, I don't think 7 years is termination papers. Not when he's shown growth every single year.
Yeah, but this is a league where
he's had to face Cleveland and LeBron the last 3 years. Nobody has gotten by Cleveland and LeBron. Nobody. And nobody's going to get by Cleveland and LeBron this year.
Yeah, they
Stevens
will.
may
the
find
Boston
a way.
Celtics will.
If they do, it's because it's on Brad Stevens' shoulder, because he's just that much better of a coach than LeBron is as a player. I will give you that.
So maybe you got to try to find a better coach.
Well, yeah, and so Mike Davis took over Indiana basketball the year Bob Knight was fired. He immediately used his coaching genius and took them to the NCAA championship game. He got his ass handed to him and never did shit again. Why? I thought he improved on Bob Knight. He got him to the championship game. What happened there, sport? He rode Bob Knight's coattails into the championship game. That team was Bob Knight being coached without Bob Knight coaching it and putting the pressure of being Bob Knight on that team. Davis had not shit to do with that team.
What's that got to do?
In no way, shape, or form. It has the same thing what you're saying. Bring somebody else in now who's going to reap the rewards of everything that Dwane Stevens has done.
And the thing is this. If somebody comes in and reaps those rewards, Dwane Casey had a chance to reap those rewards, and he fell short. John Gruden replaced Tony Dungy. He won the Super Bowl. I don't think for 1 minute Tony Dungy wins the Super Bowl with that Tampa Bay team. I think he'd overstayed his welcome.
No.
He went to Indianapolis. He gets to win one eventually. He was a good
and wins the Super Bowl in Indianapolis and goes to another Super Bowl, except for one celebrity reality star fumble. We probably win that game too on an onside kick that the bonehead was worried about his playmate girlfriend sitting in the stands. Instead of fumbling, getting down on the damn ball, we don't lose that game.
Or maybe it's Peyton Manning.
But I'm not defending Dungy.
Peyton Manning also. That was that Peyton. That wasn't.
You're
Tony
going
Dungy.
off.
That
Where
was
are
Jim
you
Caldwell,
going now?
Wasn't it?
What?
That was Jim Caldwell that coached that team.
Was Dungy already gone?
Yeah.
No, I think Dungy was still there, wasn't he?
No.
I'll look it up. I don't know. Whatever. I think it's a huge mistake at this point in time, both publicity-wise and team spirit-wise. I think it's a black eye on the Raptors. I think it's a black eye on the NBA. This guy was not sinking. He was climbing. And he was facing the same wall that every team in the East has faced as long as LeBron's been in Cleveland.
But you got.
And there has not been any other coach or any other team that has climbed that wall and scaled over it. And I think if LeBron leaves or LeBron continues to diminish his skills, or he's having the best year playoff year of his life right now. I think that Toronto becomes a team, along with the Celtics and along with the Sixers. I don't think the Pacers are going to get much better than they are right now in their current configuration. I think they need a coach. After we saw the coaching decisions made by their coach in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the crucial game.
I think Nate McMillan should be fired.
I think he should be.
Now, why can't you fire a guy that just got swept by the same damn team, Steve, who's had 7 years to build that team? Nate McMillan comes in a year or two, they're in the playoffs almost beating LeBron, and you'll fire him. But you don't want to fire the guy that's failed 7 times.
I didn't say I'd fire McMillan.
Yeah, you did. You said, I agree.
No, I did not say I agree. I was trying to come back with a smart-ass comeback on you right away. To say, no, I wouldn't fire McMillan. I just would make sure he was aware of the bonehead mistakes he made in the course of the last 2 or 3 minutes of a game to allow Cleveland to even get the damn shot off.
Well, this is kind of like if you're the CEO
and he had
of a
every
major
right to go there
corporation.
and ask. Apparently, he had every right to go ask that the goaltend charge be reviewed. He could have stopped and said, hey, whoa, I want that reviewed. He could have.
And that's why he should be fired.
Bonehead moves.
That's why he should be fired.
Well, no, there's a difference there. There's a huge. That's
two
isolated.
It cost them the series, and that is common sense that you challenge that. Even if you don't think it's goaltending, you challenge it just on the off chance that it is because of the situation and the time in the game, and the risk reward there is high on the reward end, not on the risk end.
McMillan should not have been fired. McMillan should be coached very vehemently by the general manager of the team.
You didn't think he was a very good coach.
I don't think he's a very good coach.
Then why would you want to keep a guy that's not a very good coach?
Because I don't think there's anybody better for the Pacers right now in their growth period right now. You're disrupting an entire growth period of an organization and a franchise. Somebody who's been with that program for 7 years, who started that growth period, who built that growth period, who took players under his wing, who players now believe in him as a coach. They believe in him as their leader. He's proven success. He can coach. Now let's just coach the coach and make him a better playoff coach. You need to understand that one and done is different than regular season play. If he can't do that,
you can't make somebody a better playoff coach.
I don't. You can make anybody better at anything.
This is the thing.
On, Mike.
This is the thing. In a situation
you made
like
me
that,
better on this radio show.
Listen.
You've made me better on this show.
Hold on. Listen. Just hear me out. All right? Psychologically.
Yeah.
All right? If you are a coach and you have a problem getting over the hump, a lot of times there's something psychologically that blocks you. There's a lack of confidence, and no coaching can fix that. The only thing that can fix a failure in the playoffs, and I know this because I've done it before, is when you fail from it, that you learn from it yourself. You know, because I'll tell you what, if you're a really good coach, you're a great coach at anything, you think you know more than everybody else anyways, especially somebody that is not a coach. Now, the way to get to be a great coach is surround yourself and ask great coaches things. But if you got some GM trying to coach you up, I don't think that works. And I think when you get to the level of these guys, that you have to have a certain arrogance about you, that you got to be able to figure it out yourself. And I think this, from what I watched of that series, I don't think he has figured that out. And I don't think in the NBA, where you got guys like DeRozan that people are going to start throwing major money at, your window closes in the next year or two, because it's not going to be real easy to get a big-time free agent to come to Toronto. It never has been. So if you stand pat and you're wrong here, this whole thing totally implodes. If you don't stand pat, you're wrong. It still implodes, but at least to the fans, it looks like you made an attempt to win.
I totally disagree with that. I'm a purist of the game. I think that when you have a winning formula,
you know what?
It has everything to do.
Explain to me what that means, then.
You don't. Mike, good God, I'm getting pissed off now. I don't want to get pissed off on the radio.
No, what's the purity of the game? What do you mean?
The purity of the game is you're talking about a coach should come in and be the arrogant one, and I know more than anybody can do it.
No, I'm telling you, as a coach,
that's the mentality that buried the NBA.
Hold on.
Superstar mentality of I'm LeBron James. I will do this for you.
Okay, we're talking about LeBron
now the
James.
Celtics are bringing back in. The Celtics are bringing back in the team concept. The whole one.
Totally missing my point. Totally missing my point. I think Brad Stevens thinks he knows more than everybody else. Brad Stevens does not come off that way. I think great coaches, the majority, to be great at anything, you have to have a huge self-belief in yourself. That's what I'm saying.
Anybody to be successful at that level does.
Yeah, anybody to be successful at any level does. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you go in and you're arrogant to the players. You're the opposite to the players because you know that it takes each other to be able to win, and you don't want any outside noise because that outside noise don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's kind of like when you see something stupid that's said by somebody on an NCAA basketball broadcast and they never even played Division I basketball, and you're screaming at the TV, I've played, you're full of crap. Kind of the same thing. I'm just saying this. In the end, I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan, and I equate this with that. And I want my coach gone because he has not succeeded. Your job as a college coach, that's where the purity is. I don't think there's been purity in the NBA, maybe ever. And I think if you're waiting on purity in the NBA, you're probably never going to get it. Because when that much money is involved, there's usually not too much purity anywhere.
I don't buy that story. I think there is purity in the NBA. I think there's guys that want to play to win. I think that the Bulls were pure. I think those guys wanted to win. They made money. They made tons of money. And it's easy for you to rebuke me because they made tons of money. But those guys didn't care about money as much as they cared about getting rings and winning. And they all did their job and they all did their part. The Lakers, with all the superstars that team had in the 80s, those guys cared about winning. They just freaking wanted to win. Tiger Woods doesn't want to finish second in a golf tournament. He doesn't care about that. He cares about the purity of the game, and he just wants to win.
How about this? In 1980, the LA Lakers won the NBA World Championship. In 1981, Pat Riley got the job over Paul Westhead because Magic Johnson was so pure and wanted to win so bad that he had his head coach fired.
Right.
That's not really purity because that's a guy
that's not purity. That's reality.
Exactly. And you know what? It's reality that if you don't put a ring on your finger, you are always in jeopardy as a professional coach.
But there was no player from the Raptors who wanted their coach fired.
Yeah.
There was no player that's come out and badmouthed their coach and said, "Good riddance."
Because they're not going to because they all like him and they all respect him.
I know, because they all want to keep their jobs.
Hey,
you got a million answers to every question I throw up there. It was a wrong move. It was a wrong move at this point in his career. If he continues to go the Marv Levy route and for 15 years fails on his ass, then at some point you cut your ties, as Jack Welch said.
I will tell you this,
you cut
Steve,
the bottom 20%.
I will make this prediction.
Point.
I'll make this prediction. I don't think it's necessarily a bad move, but I think it is the best thing that has ever happened to Dwane Casey. He will find a job
he'll be a head coach,
and he'll win.
He'll double his salary in no time, and he'll fit. You're right.
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, you're right. I have to give you that because I'm pulling for him. I can't wait till he gets another job, and he'll be hired before summer ball starts.
Hey, and admit it, you'd love to see the Pacers fire Nate McMillan and hire him right away.
I wouldn't be opposed to that. I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. But I'm not going to say that. If Nate McMillan's our coach next year, then he's our coach.
Hey, and I would like to say this right now. I've never been to a Toronto Raptors practice. I have seen very few Raptor games. I'm just saying, in the end, in professional sports, if you go 7 years and you go 3 straight years and you can't get by somebody, you're usually going to be replaced. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's life when you're dealing with that much money and that much ego with owners.
So you judge books by their cover. Good for you.
Who's judging a book by their cover?
You.
How's that?
We hadn't won. Nobody's beat LeBron in 3 years. Nobody has.
Yeah.
Nobody has beat LeBron in 3 years.
Golden State did.
In the East. And they have a superstar that's every bit as big and valuable to the NBA as LeBron. Toronto does not have that. I think what he's done at Toronto to take an absolute hellhole to the NBA and to put them in a place of relevance is bigger than what any coach has done in professional basketball in the last 7 years, except for what Brad Stevens is doing at Boston right now. And, Popovich is up there because he's done it for the longest time, but his days are numbered now. They're not winning anymore.
All right,
he doesn't
Steve,
have the talent.
Hey, real quick before we wrap it up, we are going to drop in a commercial for Replenishing Care. It only takes 42 seconds, and we'll be back with our final thoughts after this.
Replenishing Technologies helps athletes of all levels train, recover, and perform at their absolute best. We do this by offering the PEMF 120, the world's leading pulsed electromagnetic field therapy device. Workouts, injury, and stress cause cells to lose their natural power. PEMF works like a battery charger, helping cells regain the power needed to dump toxins, take in oxygen and nutrients, and repair. 95% of athletes report less pain, increased range of motion, more energy, and they simply feel better after using PEMF 120. If you'd like to count yourself among that group, contact us at www.replenishingtechnologiesinc.com.
All right, guys, we are back on the Grueling Truth Sports Network with myself, Mike Goodpaster, and Steve Risley. All right, Steve, if you have any final thoughts, closing comments, let everybody know where they can find us on social media.
They can find us on growingtruth.net, a website. They can find us on Growing Truth, at Growing Truth on Twitter. You can find us at Survive the Magic, actually, is the Twitter handle for this show, and at SRisley34. And same usual places. And we thank you for your time. And that's all I have to say about this.
Yeah, and Steve, I would say this. I tend to agree with you on Casey, but my point was, in professional sports, that crap happens, whether it's right or wrong. And, I mean, I saw the Cincinnati Reds fire Dusty Baker because everybody hated him because he couldn't win in the playoffs, and now they lose 100 games every year. So I see it both ways. My main point in the whole thing was it happens. And a lot of times it's stupid, but I do think in the end it will work out better for Dwane Casey than it does the Toronto Raptors, because I think the window there is closing anyways, and I think this gives him an opportunity to go somewhere, get a fresh start, and show everybody that they were wrong.
Say good night, Mike.
Good night, Mike. But
good
remember,
night.
You can catch us on iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.